going to take my floor pump to do this. We want to put a little bit of air in the tire first. So I'll show you this floor pump since we have it out. So this one actually has two settings. So I have my Presta, which is the gray side. I have my Schrader on the big side. So you can see, or the black side, so you can see the Schrader valve's a little bit bigger. So you want to make sure that you also have the right pump for the tube you're using. So oftentimes if you buy a bike pump, so like this one for example, had a Schrader valve on it, so I had to purchase a separate adapter to use for Presta for that particular pump. So you just want to be aware of that when you're getting some of these resources. Cool. So I gave it a little bit of air. I might give it a little bit more air just so we have a little bit of structure in our tire. Perfect. Close that bad boy up. So now I'm going to find the hole here, lock my valve through the hole, and I'm going to tuck the inner tube. And I'm going to be really careful here that I don't puncture the inner tube with my nails, anything like that. I want to make sure it's all the way up inside my tire. So I'm going to use my fingers. Again, I'm going to start on the opposite side and just use my thumbs. If you notice there, that inner tube is kind of sitting out a little bit, so I want to make sure that's up and solid. And I'm just continuing to use my thumbs, making sure everything's fully underneath the rim of the tire. So it gets a little bit more challenging once you get to the end. So I like to use the tire levers in reverse. So if you notice, they have this little clippy side here that helps leverage the tire off. So what I can do is I can get it on the rim of the wheel and I can kind of leverage it in the opposite way. I guess it was nervous because it's being recorded. There we go. So I can work my way towards the stem. Perfect. So that made it a lot easier, so I don't have to struggle with wasting a lot of energy to get my grip back on. So before I put the tire back on, I'm going to scan around, make sure I don't have an inner tube sticking out anywhere. So another really important piece of this when you're thinking about it is oftentimes your tires do have a certain direction that they go. So this specific tire that I have here, it's a pretty obvious tread pattern where the pointy side is like an arrow, so it's showing your direction of travel. But most of your tires, if you look on the wall here, will have a directional arrow, which for some reason this one is not very visible. So you just want to scan that and make sure that your tire is going to be in the right direction, the right orientation, so you're not working against the tire, because you want to be as efficient as possible, which is one of the great benefits of cycling versus running or walking. So remember, we had on the third kind of cog there, so I'm going to make sure I actually get it on the right cog. I guess my bike's getting performance anxiety here for the video. Oop. Oop. Might actually stand up. There we go. And now I'm going to crank it a little bit just so it sets. And now I'm going to tighten my tire lever up. Perfect. So, and I always like to have the lever on the opposite side of my gear set. This is also a helpful reminder, so I don't have to look for that arrow on the tire. So if you notice on my front wheel where it doesn't matter as much, I have the same thing, This tread pattern's a little bit funkier, so this one I definitely have to look at the air. I can't do a quick visual check. So that just kind of helps me out on that front. So now what I want to do is, because I have this floor pump, I'm going to use that. I'm going to keep my area clean here, just in case other people are riding by. I'm going to open up my valve. And I'm going to start to inflate my tire, but I don't want to go all out just yet because I want to be making sure I'm looking to see, making sure that my inner tube's not sticking out anywhere. Sweet, looks good. Cool. And we want to make sure we know what our ideal PSI is for our tire. So this is a 700 by 25 width tire. Again, this is wide if you're racing, but it's a good middle ground for like if you're doing like training and things like that. My front tire is actually a little bit narrower, so this is a 700 by 23, which is your common race tire. A lot of applications, especially if you're on a Greenway that's on gravel paths or things like that, you might want to at least do a 700 by 28, which is going to give you a little bit more width, and look for a more aggressive tread pattern. So this is designed specifically for roadways, so it doesn't give me a lot of traction if I'm on loose gravel or things like that. But because I use this to ride to work today, I was just on roads, so in like local traffic and things like that. So I'm going just a little over 100 PSI on my pump, which this pump I do have a PSI test. If I was on the road and I had to use my either my hand pump or the CO2 pump, then I would just be feeling to make sure it's like firm enough. And as we learned about in some of the other videos, you might adjust your pressure depending on the weather conditions or what your trail conditions are. Make sure I close the stem on my valve. And if you notice here, sometimes your stem, when you buy a new inner tube, it'll come with a little screw here that'll lock the stem in place on the wheel, and then there's a separate end cap. But I actually take these off just to save a little bit of weight, which makes it not as, it still works, it still does the job, but that's just like a little thing if you're like really into cutting weight and space and all that, which I left it on in this example just for the demo purposes. So I want to make sure I wrap up my inner tube, and I want to make sure I take this out with me. So this here is a pretty big blowout, but I'm going to try to patch this at home so I can minimize my waste, because this is a rubber thing that I don't want to just throw away. So I'm going to try to patch this at home when I get back. So I have a patch kit, which I should have brought. We could have done another video on that. That would be cool. So that's something I want to put that either in my back pocket, or I might put it in my saddlebag so I can ride up. I want to make sure everything's good to go, and then I can be on my way. And one of the things I want to make sure I do is, because I took my tire off and replaced it, I want to make sure I close my brakes and make sure, I'm going to give it a quick spin just to make sure my brake pads are still in the proper position before I hop back on and ride away.